Hello, hello, hello. It's Nicholas Rosseinsky here with week 10 of our 13-week odyssey around the frontiers of therapy and spirituality. And I'm particularly excited to be here in week 10 because we finally get to touch in a little bit of detail on a topic that's very dear to my heart and very important, I think, which is science. As you know by now, the centerpiece of this exploration is Richard Harvey's Sacred Attention Therapy, or SAT, which you can find out more about at centerforhumanawakening.com. And as I said last week, I'm going to refer you back to weeks 1 to 8 of this journey for more details about SAT-C++, which is this Odyssey's innovative product, if you like, as a complement to standard SAT, and for more details about the awakening of matter, which is SAT-C++'s complement to SAT's focus on human awakening. So here in week 10, we're in the second week of a 3-week examination of the awakening of matter from spiritual, scientific, and societal perspectives. And this week, obviously, it's the turn of science. And again, I'm going to attempt the impossible this week. So the relationship between science and SAT-C++ is actually the topic of a 3-hour standalone course. And today I'm going to try for a 10-minute tour of the entire territory at quite a rapid click. So here we go. Why is science important to spirituality? So one reason is that science is societally powerful, perhaps even culturally dominant. And as I've said in previous weeks, in the modern world, scientific thinking is strongly present in economic activity, in politics, in healthcare, in education, and so on. So when science asserts no active place for spirit, in reality, spirituality can be strongly squashed or repressed. Now, this assertion isn't inherent to science per se, as a knowledge method, but it definitely applies to a version that I call Science 2.0, which is the dominant mainstream version currently. Now, of course, various responses have been made to Science-2's denial of spirituality, to claim wrongly that there's no contradiction, to try to create 2 different realms of relevance for science and spirituality, which actually ends up leaving the entire everyday world to science, or to attempt to insert active spirit into the quantum aspect of science, which is perhaps the best of a bad lot, but still turns out to really not be the answer we ultimately need. And these responses don't give us what we need, because this whole frame, the whole setup of this science-spirituality relationship is wrong. It's spirituality taking Science 2.0 as a given and then pleading for some space in relation to that science so it can have a place, a voice in the modern world. And the real reason that the science-spirituality relationship is important is that we need new incarnations of science to partner with spirituality and literally co-create a new reality that will supersede what we currently experience as the modern world. So to catalyze changes in science, spirituality instead needs to firmly assert a frame that points to the awakening of the universe as destiny, the awakening of matter as an inherent part of that, and then the next great phase of civilization as the era when we start to orient collectively to this tremendous movement of awakening. So rather than trying to fit in with Science 2.0, here, spirituality recognizes that this version of science is in fact pulling in the opposite direction. But spirituality also recognizes that science is about matter, and that matter is a crucial part of awakening. So spirituality does need a scientific partner, just not the Science 2 version. So this is where Science-5 comes in. It's the total awakening partner of spirituality, so it must be set in this gob, ob, soul, arc, reality dream context that we started looking at in week 3. For example, what Science 2 calls reality, Science 5 calls the dream, but a real dream, so to speak. Now, we can't just take Science 2 and jam it into a reality dream context. A lot of the theoretical content of science carries over, but not all of it. In particular, the sciences of consciousness and then of life must be radically revised. And this occurs in two intermediate incarnations of science that I call Science-3 and Science-4. But the most important difference between Science-5 and all its predecessors isn't so much to do with its theoretical contents, those hypotheses science asserts to be descriptively accurate. It's to do with the active role science must eventually play in awakening, in particular in the awakening of matter. So let's quickly look at that active role using a framework of consciousness, mind, world, creation, and will. So first, we need the C++ view of what's going on put into this framework. So there's a kind of split will when a soul or souls try to become self-creating. As I said in week 3, this is a sort of misstep that leads to the alleged separation or imagined fall. It results in a will that's both for real reality, for example, retaining cosmic creativity that originates there, and also for unreality, namely the ultimate unreality of separation. Now, as in week 3, this misstep, the splitting of will now, leads to an infinite ocean of guilt and fear. So then, as we've also seen before, the arc negotiates a repackaging of split will derived guilt and fear. Now, in this layer, cosmic creativity is still active, that same guilt and fear is still present, but there's a new feature, a mathematical order as represented here by the equations of general relativity and the standard model of particle physics, to which the energies of guilt and fear are coupled. Now, this order is not a feature of fundamental reality, of the real reality of God, Ob, and Soul. It's a particular kind of mathematics selected by the arc and volitionally agreed to by the soul or souls involved in split will. So then next, cosmic creativity acting in relation to guilt, fear, and the mathematical order creates our material universe or world. The beginning of this active creation in consciousness is what we now call the Big Bang. So pure scientific inquiry, which is a beautiful and spiritually innocuous activity when done in purity, looks into the world and discovers those same mathematical regularities which were negotiated by souls and the arc. Now, the spiritually problematic versions of science occur when this looking and discovery are divorced from this actual context in which they're taking place, which I suggest is the cosmic creativity, the split will, the arc, and so on. Now, as I've mentioned before, intelligence is the capacity that takes every aspect of context into account. So contextless science is actually profoundly unintelligent. Okay, so let's look at now again at Science 2.0. It denies that there is a deeper. It sees the mathematics that it discovers as law, not creative choice. And in doing all of this, it implicitly serves the unreality part of split will, while at the same time denying that will in this sense even exists. So again, the fundamentally unintelligent aspect of Science 2 is the neglect of context. And starting from an explicit appreciation of context, the whole suite from split will to mind and world is where Science 5 starts, here. Here, mind starts with a complete appreciation of what scientific inquiry really is that we saw on a previous slide. And it also differs from other versions of science in its apprehension of a post-separation reality for the entire universe. So a Science 5 mind looks towards that post-separation reality and then brings back, so to speak, the new rules of that reality. This is all a bit poetic and metaphorical in the interests of relative brevity. And then next, again, somewhat metaphorically, this Science 5 mind engages with the levels of consciousness where the current reality rules exist and participates in reprogramming them. Finally, cosmic creativity functions, as it does right now, as it does in all layers, relative to the new rules that it's given, the editing of this mathematical order, and then creates that post-separation reality. Then, as a postscript, it's important to recognize the role of the arc, the agency that restructures consciousness again, in all of this Science 5 activity. When the original so-called laws of physics were negotiated negotiated, the Ark had it in mind, so to speak, that these laws would bring us here to a point where we can start to rewrite these laws in active participation with the Ark. So that's been a huge amount again this week. Let me leave you with these takeaways. So the awakening of the universe requires a Science-5 style active engagement with the rules of alleged reality. So catalyzing a 2, 3, 4, 5 evolution of science is both an awakening and a civilizational imperative. And awakening of matter spiritualities like Sat-C+ and Sat-C++ have a vital part to play in this evolution. I'm Nicholas. Thanks for watching. See you next time.